A surprising request. It started like any other evening, the kind of quiet night where the world slows down just enough for you to hear your own thoughts. The kids were asleep. The house was still. I had just finished brushing my hair and slipping into my favorite cotton pajamas. You know the kind, soft, lived-in, comforting. But then I saw him, James. He stepped into our bedroom with that familiar half-smile on his face. The kind that always meant he was up to something. But this time, it wasn't just playful. There was something deeper in his eyes. A softness, yes, but also a fire. Like he was holding onto a secret that was too important to keep inside for much longer. I paused, not out of fear, but because I knew this moment carried weight. The kind of weight you feel before something changes, not in a bad way, but in a way you'll remember. Over the years, James had always kept our relationship fresh. He'd surprised me with weekend getaways, unexpected date nights, even breakfast in bed on random Tuesdays. But this felt different. As he walked toward me, the air seemed to shift. He wasn't rushing, he wasn't teasing. His steps were slow, deliberate, like he was approaching something sacred. And I wonder, have you ever looked at someone you thought you knew completely, only to realize there's still more of them left to discover? James stood in front of me and gently brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. His touch was tender, but his gaze held purpose. It was as if he was asking me to trust him, not just in that moment, but in whatever was coming next. That night, without saying much at all, he invited me into a different kind of intimacy. One that didn't start with touch, but with presence, with intention, with the unspoken promise that even after all these years, there were still uncharted places in our love to explore. It's funny how a quiet night can become a turning point, how a glance can say more than 1,000 words. That evening, James didn't just walk into the room, he walked into a new chapter of our story. A new intimacy. There's something sacred about vulnerability, not the kind we fake to seem soft, but the kind where we truly let go, the kind where we don't know what comes next, but we choose to trust anyway. That night, as I sat across from James, I felt a shift. He wasn't the same man who made silly jokes over dinner or playfully danced in the kitchen. There was a new energy to him, still gentle, still familiar, but deeper, grounded, focused. He looked into my eyes, and in a quiet voice said something that caught me completely off guard. "Lie back and spread your legs." Now let's be honest, those words in any other context could feel cold or even crass. But not this time, not from him. His tone wasn't demanding, it was almost hesitant, searching, like he was offering something more than just physical connection, something spiritual. I could feel the nerves bubbling inside me. My heart raced, my thoughts scattered. But underneath all that, I trusted him. Have you ever had a moment where everything in you says, this is new, this is scary, but a deeper voice whispers, but this is safe? I leaned back, slowly, intentionally, because sometimes love is a decision you make with your whole body. Then came the moment I'll never forget. He leaned in and kissed me, not in a place I expected, but in a way that said, I see all of you, and I honor every part. That kiss wasn't about pleasure. It was about presence. It wasn't just physical, it was a ceremony, quiet, intimate, transformative. In that vulnerable space, something beautiful happened. I wasn't just loved, I was cherished. And maybe that's the part of intimacy we don't talk about enough, the quiet magic in feeling fully seen, fully safe, fully adored. It's not always about grand gestures or wild passion. Sometimes it's a kiss in the dark that rewrites your entire understanding of what connection truly means. There's a moment in every long-term relationship where things either plateau or deepen. For us, that turning point came not through words, but through presence. Through that quiet, vulnerable moment we had shared, the one that didn't demand explanation, only trust. After that night, something subtle but powerful began to shift between us. I noticed it in the way James looked at me. Not just with desire, but with understanding. You know that kind of look. The one that says, I see you. I'm still here. I want to know even more of you. His touch wasn't just tender. It was intentional. His silence wasn't distant. It was safe. I started to realize that we had stepped into a new kind of intimacy, one where emotions weren't hidden, but welcomed. Where trust wasn't implied, it was built moment by moment. We began talking more, not just about logistics or daily routines, but about real things, deep things, what we feared, what we missed, what we secretly hoped for. And in that space, without judgment or performance, we rediscovered each other. I felt seen, not just as a wife or a woman, but as a whole person, emotionally, spiritually, soulfully. And if I'm being honest, that kind of connection is rare. It's not something you stumble upon, it's something you create together. It takes courage to show your cracks, to say, this is who I really am, and hope the other person leans in, not away. But James did lean in. Every time. And maybe that's what real intimacy is, the willingness to stay curious about each other, even after years together. To ask, who are you now? And how can I love that version of you too? We weren't just growing closer, we were evolving. Not into different people, but into deeper versions of ourselves, together. Something changed after that night. Not in a dramatic, movie-worthy way, but in the small, quiet moments that start to feel different. It was like we had pressed reset, not just in our marriage, but in how we saw each other. We started having conversations we hadn't dared to touch in years. Not just the what's for dinner or did you pay the bill kind of talk, but real talk. The kind where you share the parts of yourself you usually keep tucked away, the desires you've been too shy to speak aloud, the fears that don't have names, the dreams you forgot you had. It was raw. It was honest. And surprisingly, it was freeing. James opened up in a way I hadn't seen before. He shared things he'd carried quietly for years, insecurities, doubts, little wounds that hadn't healed because, truthfully, we never gave them a chance. And you know what's wild? The moment he spoke them out loud, they lost their power. Sometimes vulnerability feels like a risk, but more often than not, it's actually a doorway. And for us, it opened into something new. We began laughing more, over silly things, over shared memories, even over our own awkwardness. There was a lightness between us, one that didn't cancel out the deep stuff but danced alongside it. We held hands more, stole kisses in the kitchen again. We found each other in the ordinary and fell in love all over again, not just with the person, but with the connection. Rediscovery isn't about going back to who you were. It's about meeting who you are now and choosing to love that version again and again. And sometimes the greatest growth in a relationship doesn't come from grand gestures. It comes from sitting down, looking someone in the eye, and saying, let's keep learning each other. Sometimes the biggest changes in life don't come with warning signs or perfect timing. They sneak in, hidden in laughter, spontaneity, and those little why not moments. One night, James did something that caught me completely off guard. Pulled me under the bed, literally. We were lying there talking about something random, giggling like teenagers, and the next thing I knew we were crawling underneath into that small, forgotten space of childhood mischief and quiet intimacy. First it felt silly, ridiculous even, but then something shifted. In the closeness of that dark, quiet space, with the world muffled around us and only the sound of our breath between us, it suddenly didn't feel silly at all. It felt sacred, honest, electric. Sometimes being in an unusual space strips everything down to the essentials. No distractions, no expectations, just skin, breath, connection. There was a rawness to that moment, a playful beginning that turned into something deeply passionate. And that passion? It wasn't loud or theatrical, it was present, it was true. That night became more than just a memory. It became a threshold, the place where the old version of us stepped aside, and something new quietly took its place. And then, a few weeks later, I felt it. A subtle shift, a little fatigue here, nausea there. Her craving for things I hadn't touched in years. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was stress, hormones, a long week. But deep down, I knew I was pregnant. It's funny how life speaks softly before it changes everything. That one spontaneous, almost silly moment under the bed. It gave birth literally and figuratively to a brand new chapter. Nothing truly prepares you for the moment you hear your baby's first cry, let alone two of them. Yes, twins, a boy and a girl. Born from a journey that started quietly, intimately, beneath the frame of a bed, and blossomed into something so much bigger than either of us could have imagined. Holding them for the first time, I didn't cry immediately. I just stared. It felt like the world had paused. My heart was trying to make space for a kind of love it had never held before. And then I looked over at James, his usual calm demeanor completely undone by the tears quietly falling down his cheeks. We had always talked about starting a family, but like most things in life, you never really grasp the depth of something until you're in it, until you're sleep-deprived holding a bottle at 3 a.m., rocking a crying newborn while the other stirs and realizing you wouldn't trade this chaos for anything in the world. The truth is, we didn't become parents that day in the hospital. We'd already been preparing silently for months, through trust, through late-night conversations, through letting ourselves be seen, known, and loved. Every layer of vulnerability we peeled back with each other became a brick in the foundation of the family we were now building. Parenthood didn't just give us children. It gave our love a new dimension. It added texture to our story, messy, exhausting, magical texture. We became teammates in a brand new way, discovering that love is no longer just a feeling, but 1,000 small actions done every day, even when no one's watching. And maybe that's the real miracle of starting a family. It doesn't just make you more, it makes your love grow deeper, fuller, stronger. Not perfect, but real. Love doesn't always arrive in grand gestures or movie-worthy speeches. Sometimes, love shows up quietly, through patience, through presence, through staying even when it would be easier to walk away. Looking back now, I realize that everything changed when we allowed ourselves to be fully seen. That night under the bed, it might sound silly to some, but to us it was sacred. Spontaneous, yes, but also symbolic. It marked the beginning of something we didn't even know we were ready for. It was the start of the kind of love that's not about perfection, but about depth. Over time, we learned that real intimacy isn't just physical. It's emotional courage. It's saying, here I am, fears and all, and trusting the other person to hold you without judgment. It's being strong enough to be soft, vulnerable enough to be real, and it's in that space where trust meets tenderness that a marriage transforms. Not into something new, but into something truer. Today, when I see our twins laughing, playing, making messes we used to stress about, I smile. They're not just our children. They are the living, breathing proof that love, when nurtured, grows in the most unexpected places. We still talk about that night under the bed, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with awe. Who knew such a small, unplanned moment could ripple so far into the future? Life, of course, isn't perfect. There are still long days, disagreements, sleepless nights, but the difference now is we're not afraid of them. Because we've built something stronger than comfort. We've built connection. And in the end, that's what love is. Not a destination, but a continual unfolding. A quiet promise whispered every day. I choose you. Again and again. And that's the beauty of love. It surprises you, stretches you, and if you're lucky, it transforms you in the most unexpected ways. If this story touched something in your heart, or reminded you of your own journey, I hope you'll stay with us for more. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us tell more real, raw, and beautiful stories just like this one. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. And remember, love doesn't need to be perfect, just honest. See you in the next story.